With 2 giant metal cages containing over 100,000 balls, a draw that takes over 4 hours, and a prize fund of up to €2.5 billion, this annual lottery is considered the largest in the world. And yet the chances of winning are the highest of any state lottery, with a history of entire towns celebrating collective wins. In here is a charming culture of community spirit, many opportunities to win, and of course some mathematics, where we'll get to explore one of the simplest yet most counterintuitive properties in probability. And I've even tried my luck this year. So join me on the story of the Spanish Christmas lottery. Hope you enjoy. You may have heard this lottery referred to as El Gordo, but El Gordo is actually the name of just one of the prizes up for grabs. I won't make this mistake though, and I'll just call it the Spanish Christmas lottery, because no matter how clearly you state things, the comments never forgive you. I guess that technically makes this a Christmas video? I love Christmas. So if El Gordo is just one of the prizes, how does this thing work? Well, unlike most modern lotteries which involve predicting a random combination of numbers, this lottery functions more like a complex raffle. Your ticket has a number on it. The ticket numbers are 5 digits long, running from all zeros to all nines. Clearly the Spanish state lottery company has a modern view of the natural numbers. So that means there are a total of 100,000 ticket numbers. They are drawn from that big metal cage one at a time. If your number is drawn, you win. But how much? Well, this is where the second cage comes in. This contains 1,807 prize balls. At the same time a number ball is drawn, a prize ball is drawn. So this ball determines how much the player with this ticket number will win. 8 of these balls are worth €60,000, 2 are worth 200,000, 1 worth 500,000, 1 worth 1.25 million, and 1 first prize of 4 million. And it's this big prize, aka the fat one, which is referred to as El Gordo. The sum of these prizes is nowhere near 2.5 billion, I know, don't worry, we'll get there. It's the job of school children to sing the numbers as they are drawn.
54.274. 60.000.
Given that this process takes over 4 hours, I think it is super commendable that they are able to maintain this level of energy for so long. I've drawn 1 ball and I've already lost interest. The balls are stored in these frames as a permanent physical record of the draw, which I find incredibly charming. And when it's one of the aforementioned big prizes, the number is sung over and over and a board of lottery officials must inspect and ratify the result. I guess because they don't really trust the children. Basically, they're like teachers who give their students jobs to make them feel important, but with no real responsibility. As a nice historical note, the children are students at the College of San Ildefonso, whose Spanish Wikipedia photo could use an upgrade. The school historically housed and taught orphans of public servants, so they were selected in 1871 to read the numbers. But before you get all warm and fuzzy about how wholesome that is, apparently this decision was much more practical. As orphaned children, they could neither buy tickets nor have parents with skin in the game. Therefore, they'd be less motivated to cheat. The school has been open to all students since 1999, and they continue the over 150-year-old tradition of singing out the numbers. All 1,807 of them, which includes those big prizes. But what about the other balls? Well, the others are called La Padriera, which translates to the stoning, which is a pretty harsh punishment for failing to win a monetary prize. But actually, all of those are worth €1,000 each, which perfectly demonstrates what I adore about this lottery. See, most lotteries work on a similar format of predicting which numbers will be drawn from a larger pool. The most popular US lottery is Powerball. No relation to dishwasher tablets, but you have to predict 5 of 69 and 1 of 26 balls. In the UK we have Thunderball. No relation to the Bond film, where you have to predict 5 from 39 and 1 from 14, and Lotto, no relation to the sports brand, which is 6 from 59. And finally, in parts of Europe, there's the Euro Millions. No relation to... Nope, I think that joke is dead. Anyway, it's 5 from 50 and 2 from 12. Most lotteries around the world are similar, and they have 2 things in common. Firstly, the chances of winning are extremely low. If you have to drive at least a mile to your nearest ticket shop, you have more chance of dying on the way there than of winning. So if you do win, please drive carefully when you collect your prize. Secondly, they are usually centered around a big jackpot. Yes, there are smaller prizes for matching some of the numbers, but these are usually pretty unlikely and still don't pay out very much. The Spanish Christmas lottery runs contrary to both of these. The odds of winning are relatively high. There are 1,807 prize balls drawn, so your odds of winning something is about 2%. And actually, there are even more ways of winning that I'll get to shortly. The odds of winning the jackpot are 1 in 100,000, which, yeah, it's unlikely, but it's several of orders of magnitude more likely than winning any of those earlier lotteries. It also isn't centered around that massive jackpot because the amount players do win is lower. This lends a more wholesome spirit to the lottery, since more people get to rejoice in winning. Even if it isn't hundreds of millions, it still can be a life-changing amount. Hell, after looking at my latest ad revenue checks, I feel like taking a stoning. I also wouldn't mind winning €1,000. But it gets better, because a few quirks of this lottery add an even greater community spirit. If you win, it's more likely that your friends and family will win, and it might even increase the chance that people in your town win. Like in 2016, in Pinos Puente, a small town struggling with high rates of unemployment, 451 people won €125,000 each. What's going on there? Well, we need to dive deeper into all the various ways to win and how the tickets are actually distributed. As I said, these prizes don't add up to anything near 2.5 billion, so let's get into it. And in doing so, we'll reveal more about the culture of this lottery and some challenging mathematical questions. So the first thing to realize is that I'm still wearing my dressing gown. So the first thing to realize is that each ticket costs €200, which is a ridiculously high cost of entry. So actually each ticket is divided into 10 sub-tickets called decimos, or tenths. These cost €20 each, and it means that if your number comes out, you are entitled to 1/10 of the prize. So winning El Gordo usually means that you win €400,000. But because the tickets are sold one page of decimos at a time, when you and your friends or family buy tickets, you're probably all going to buy the same number, meaning you can all rejoice in winning. As luck would have it, my annual friends holiday is in Spain this year, so I decided to get in on the action. 9 of my friends bought a decimo with the same number, that way if I win, we all win. Really, knowing my track record, that just means that when I inevitably fail, I'll drag everyone else down with me. Basically, this ticket symbolizes our entire friendship. But you never know, the draw is on the 22nd of December like it is every year, so wish us luck. But how can it be that hundreds of people in a single town can win at once? Well, that's because there are actually multiple copies of each 5-digit number. So each ticket has its number but also belongs to a certain series. The quantity of series varies, but recently 180 series have been available, meaning a total of 18 million tickets. As far as the draw goes, the series number is irrelevant. It just means that when a certain number is drawn, every ticket with that number will win. So for example, last year, the El Gordo number was 88008. There were 180 tickets with that number, each split into 10 decimos. So now we start to see where this insane prize fund comes from, because there are actually 180 copies of each prize. And because there are 1,807 prize balls, that means a total of about 325,000 people will win something during the draw. And how great is that? You might not win millions and millions, you might win 400k or as low as €100, but that's a much more appealing offer, especially at Christmas. If all your friends and family get involved, it's relatively likely that someone will win something, rather than one person in the whole country getting to claim all of it. There's a tradition of families picking the same number every year. Apparently there are businesses who will have their special numbers that they choose every year for their employees. And also, you can only buy tickets at official state-run lottery shops, of which there may only be one in a whole town. And traditionally, certain shops will only sell certain numbers, meaning that everyone in a given town will buy similar numbers, and thus it's common to see entire towns celebrating a collective win. Back in 2016, the El Gordo number was 66513. The only shop selling that number was in the Acacias neighborhood of Madrid, so most winners were local to that shop. And even those who didn't have that exact number might have celebrated, because there are even more ways to win that I haven't even mentioned yet. If your ticket number is one above or below one of the top 3 prizes, you win. If you match the first 3 digits of one of the top 4 prizes, you win. If you match the last 2 digits of one of the top 3 prizes, you win. And hell, if your ticket has the same final digit as El Gordo, you get your money back. So when all is said and done, you have 10% chance of breaking even at worst. But all this got me thinking, what is the expected profit of this game? Like if I play this game every year of my life, €20 for a decimo, how much am I likely to have made or lost overall? Assuming I avoid the decades of car crashes en route to the ticket shop. That's what we'll dig into now, because it involves one of my favourite and most surprising, yet simple principles in all of probability. Before I do though, just a quick disclaimer. I love the culture surrounding this lottery and digging into the mathematical questions it prompts, but let's be clear, this is gambling. Something I don't generally encourage and something which, if done at all, should always be done infrequently, responsibly, and legally. Just felt I had to say that. And now, let's get into it. Let's simplify and imagine we buy a standard ticket for €200. We can divide everything by 10 later. When we talk about expected value, it's not an amount we would actually win in a single run, but the average return. In the same way that the average of these test scores is 60%, even though nobody actually scored that. As an example, consider the roulette wheel. One of the available bets is red or black. There are 18 numbers of each colour, but the 0 is green, so the odds of winning are 18 on 37 or 0.486. Typically, the casino odds are 1 to 1, so if you bet £1, the prize for winning is £1, and you get your money back. So, 49% of the time you walk away with £2, 51% of the time you walk away with nothing. We multiply the probability by the return for each and add them. That gives us 0.97, that's our expected winnings for this game. Because it costs £1 to play, that means our expected profit is minus 3 pence. In other words, every time you play red or black, you should expect to lose 3 pence. Now, that doesn't literally mean that when you arrive at the table and put a quid down, you'll walk away holding 97p. It just means that on average, that's the amount I'll expect to lose. So for example, if I play the game 1,000 times, betting a total of £1,000, I'll walk away from that encounter with £970 approximately. All roulette games are like this, by the way. The casino basically calculates the probability of winning and then sets that, minus a little bit, as the prize. For this reason, there is no winning strategy. You might get lucky once, but as they say, the house always wins. So to apply this to the lottery, we need the probability of winning each prize and the value of each prize, and then we can multiply and add. For a simple example, let's imagine that the only prizes on offer are the top 2 prizes. We have a 1 in 100,000 chance of winning each. We don't need to worry about the case when we lose, because the prize is 0, so when we multiply by the probability, that term will die. So that's a total expected prize of €52.50, and since it costs €200 to play, we should expect a loss of €147.50. But if we win one of these prizes, we can't win the other since the balls aren't replaced after they are drawn. Surely we have to take that into account. We also need to include the other ways to win, like getting one away or matching the first 3 digits of a big prize. Now, when I first saw this, I thought the calculation would be very complicated. You'd need to account for many cases, like what if the first and second prize are one away from each other? That means the likelihood of getting one away from either of them is reduced. Or what if they both have the same first 3 digits? Then the odds of getting the first 3 digits of either of those prizes is reduced. All this could cause an explosion of the number of different cases we'd need to consider. But, as it turns out, we don't need to do any of that. All we need to know is the probability of winning each individual prize and how much we win. Why? Let's discuss a much simpler game because this still screws with my head. Let's imagine that there are only 5 balls from 1 to 5. Let's also say our ticket is the number 3. We'll simplify the prizes too. Let's say that there are just 2 prizes. If your number is drawn for the first prize, you get 50, and if you're 1 away, you get 20. And let's say second prize, you get 15 for a hit and 5 if you're 1 away. Now, if you think about it, it actually doesn't matter which order these prizes come out. So let's just draw 2 balls and say that the first ball drawn is the first prize and the second ball is the second prize. Then there are 20 outcomes and they're all equally likely, and we can list how much we will win in each case. Summing up all of these, we'll get an expected return of 23. Now, calculating something like this is difficult in general because the outcome of the second draw is dependent on the outcome of the first draw. So you have to keep track of how things change. Add more balls and more prizes and you can imagine how things get difficult. But what if we didn't have to worry about this? Well, let's make the events independent of each other by replacing the first ball. Now, the outcome of the second prize doesn't depend on the first ball. Hell, you could even win both prizes if you're lucky enough. Now, there are 25 outcomes, all equally likely, and summing them, we get an expected return of 23. It doesn't matter. Now, if you're good at probability, this may come as no surprise to you, but as I mentioned in my last video, my strengths lie in pure maths, and yes, I'm milking this graphic because I have to somehow justify spending hours on a 10-second joke. So, to me, this is surprising and counterintuitive. I have a visceral, intuitive sense that the second game with replacement is better, as you have just as much chance of winning the first prize, and you have a chance of winning both prizes. But it just isn't the case. Why? It's actually fairly simple. Let's pick a particular prize and track its total contribution to the expected value. For example, the £50 first prize, you have a 4 in 20 chance of winning that in the first game, and a 5 in 25 chance in the second game. So it contributes a total of 10 to the expected value calculation in either case because those fractions are equivalent. That prize occurs 1/5 of the time in any case. And when you think about it, that has to be true, because whatever happens, it's still a 1 in 5 chance that you win the first prize. It doesn't matter what happens afterwards, whether I replace the ball or not. And any individual number is equally likely to come out for the second prize. If we're looking for the number 3, then 3 is just as likely as any number to be drawn second, whether we replace the balls or not. So 3 will be drawn there 1/5 of the time. The one away prizes feel more complicated, but they aren't. Let's look at the chances of getting, 1 away from the second ball. In the first game, there's 8 in 20 ways to win it, and 10 in 25 in the second game. Still, these fractions are the same, so they yield the same expected return. Like before, if your ticket is the number 3, then you get 1 away when a 2 or 4 is drawn. It'll be a 2 1/5 of the time, and a 4 1/5 of the time in any case. So you'll get 1 away in the second draw 2/5 of the time. It's just easier to see this in the second game because of the independence, but in the first game it's still true. The way I think about it is, yes, you might reduce some of the options of winning that prize on the second draw, but in doing so, you reduce the other options in such a way that the proportion of chances is still equal. The best thing about this realization is that it makes the calculation of expected value very easy. As you might have already realized, the expected value of the first prize is 1/5 times 50 plus 2/5 times 20, which is 18. And similarly for the second prize, which comes out to be 5. So the expected value for when we play both is 23. So the expected value for the sum of the prizes is equal to the sum of the expected values of each prize. This property is called linearity, and to make it extra convincing, let's prove the result in general and then apply it to the lottery. Now, this property is one of the first things you'll learn in a probability course, but since probability doesn't come natural to me, it's always something I have to recap, and a great place for that is on brilliant.org. There, you'll find entire courses on data analysis, teaching the basics of probability up to more complex topics like algorithms for clustering data. You'll find plenty of interactive modules, empowering you to deepen your understanding, and all of this is supported by real-life case studies, like data from Spotify and electric car sales, so you can see how the theory you learn is used in practice. Now, if that sounds overwhelming to you, don't worry, because Brilliant's courses are broken down into small chunks. So whether you're new or experienced in the topic, you can personalize your experience, learn at your own pace, and make use of Brilliant's habit-forming strategies that encourage you to learn regularly. You'll also find plenty of courses on maths, physics, computer science, so whatever your needs, Brilliant has you covered. Try everything today for free for a full 30 days by clicking the link in the description or scan the QR code. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. That's brilliant.org/anotherroof, and thanks to Brilliant for supporting my channel. So, to prove linearity of expectation in general, we need to introduce a little bit of notation. Let's take two games, X and Y. For game X, let's say X1 through XM are the outcomes of the game, with respective prizes A1 through AM. So in our earlier example, game X might have been that first prize, with X1 being the outcome you hit with prize 50, and outcome X2 you get 1 away with prize 20. And remember, the expected value of X is the probability of each outcome multiplied by its prize, and you add them all together. We'll set up game Y in a similar way with N outcomes and prizes B1 through Bn. Note that N needn't be the same as M, because in general the games could have a different number of outcomes. The question is, what is the expected value of the game X plus Y? The game of play X, then play Y, and then add your prizes together. If I get outcome 1 on both games, then my prize will be A1 plus B1. And I need to multiply that by the probability that X1 and Y1 occur. And then I need to do this for every possible outcome of both games. So first, let's consider all the options if X1 occurs on game X. Well then, Y1 could happen, or Y2 could happen, or all the way up to Yn happening. Now consider the options if X2 could happen. Y1, Y2, or Yn could also happen. And we can repeat this for all the possibilities for X down to Xm happening. Just one small point before we move on. This probability here of X1 and Y1, for all I care, this has nothing to do with the probability that X1 occurs. It might change, it might be dependent or independent. We'll show that it doesn't actually matter. So let's untangle this massive sum, and we'll do it exactly how we did it earlier by looking at the contribution of a particular prize. Say A1. Let's see what A1 gets multiplied by in total and factor the A1 out. Well, up here it gets multiplied by a P of X1 and Y1. It'll also get multiplied by a P of X1 and Y2, and so on up to P of X1 and Yn. And notice there isn't an A1 anywhere else. Let's do the same thing for A2. Here it gets multiplied by a P of X2 and Y1, and then by a P of X2 and Y2, and so on up to P of X2 and Yn. This will be the same for A3, A4, and so on all the way down to AN. Now let's look at the B's. A similar thing happens with B1. Here it gets multiplied by a P of X1 and Y1, and then P of X2 and Y1 all the way down to P of Xm and Y1. Same for the B2s, I'm sure you get the idea by now. And the same thing will happen for all of the B's up to and including Bn. And now every A and B are accounted for, and here's where the magic happens. Consider this sum here. This is the probability that X1 and Y1 happens, plus the probability that X1 and Y2 happens, plus all the way up to the probability that X1 and Yn happens. But think about what that's actually saying. This is the probability that X1 happens and anything happens to Y. If we don't care what happens to Y, this is just the probability that X1 happens. So A1 is being multiplied by simply a P of X1. Similarly for this sum here, this is the probability that X2 happens and Y1 happens, plus all the way up to the probability that X2 and Yn happens. It's the probability that X2 happens and anything happens to Y, so it's just the probability of X2. And the same will be true for all of the other A's. And I'm sure you won't be surprised to see that the same thing happens with the B's. This first sum is just the P of Y1, and so on. And I wonder where we've seen these before. This first one here, that's just the expectation of X, and this second one here, that's just the expectation of Y. So when all is said and done, the expectation of X plus Y is the expectation of X plus the expectation of Y. Note that this shows linearity for just 2 games, but you can extend the argument out to as many games as you like. I'll leave it as an exercise. You can put together a simple inductive argument that will work for, say, K games. And this is one of those probability facts that, algebraically, it just pops out, but intuitively, I find it difficult to grasp. Thankfully, it is true, so we can go ahead and apply it to the Spanish Christmas lottery, returning a total expected value of 140, i.e. an expected profit of minus 60. Dividing by 10, we get the average profit for a 20 euro decimo. We're expecting a profit of -6, or a 30% loss. Obviously, we were never going to profit from this because it's a lottery, but compared with other lotteries, it isn't bad. Hell, when we think about the probability of winning something, there are 15,304 prizes given out to the 100,000 tickets, so there is a 15% chance of winning at least your money back, and a 5% chance of profiting. To put this into perspective, let's contrast this with the US Powerball. Let's calculate the expected value and the chances of winning something in that game. Here we have to guess which 5 of 69 white balls and which 1 of 26 power balls will be drawn. Now there are prizes available for matching only some of the numbers. So what are the chances of winning each of these? For example, what are the chances that we match exactly 2 white balls? We can calculate this by imagining we've drawn 5 numbers, and let's consider how many tickets there are with 2 matching balls. First, there are 69 choose 5 total possible draws. And if you're unfamiliar with the choose function, I have a video where I build up a lot of basic combinatorics from scratch, but in brief, it's the number of ways of selecting 5 options from a pool of 69, where we don't care about the order in which they are drawn, and it's given by this formula. So how many tickets are there which match just 2 of these balls? Well, there are 5 choose 2 ways of selecting which 2 we match. And then since we're matching exactly 2, the other 3 must be wrong. There are 64 wrong balls, so 64 choose 3 ways of composing this. Multiplying by this gives us the number of options, and then divide that by 69 choose 5 to get the probability, which in this case is 0.0371. So even matching 2 balls is pretty unlikely. Now this is pretty easy to generalize. If instead I want to match K balls, then there are 5 choose K ways of selecting which means I need 5 minus K wrong ones, and there are 64 choose 5 minus K ways of doing that. And I'll leave it as an exercise to generalize the formula further for different numbers of total balls and different ticket sizes, so you can apply it to whatever lottery you have in your home country. So I'm going to apply that to this now and give the probability for matching each collection of white balls. And we also need to factor in the chances of getting the Powerball. You have a 1 in 26 chance of matching it and a 25 in 26 chance that you don't. Now because these draws are independent, to get the overall probability we can just multiply them. Then we multiply by the prize and add them all up to get an expected value of 1.17. At $2 per ticket, the expected profit is minus 84 cents, about a 59% loss, which is about twice as unprofitable as the Spanish Christmas lottery. Let's also contrast the probability of winning something in Powerball. When there are lots of options, generally speaking, an easier calculation is to find the probability of winning nothing and then doing 1 subtract that. Now, how can it be that we win nothing? Well, first of all, notice that if we land the Powerball, we always end up winning something. So we need the probability that we don't hit the Powerball, and we win something if we get at least 3 white balls. So to win nothing, that's when we match 0, 1, or 2 white balls. And again, we can multiply these because they are independent. As we said earlier, the chances of missing the Powerball are 25 in 26, or 0.962, and we can use our formula from earlier to derive this probability, which is 0.998. This gives us a 0.96 chance of winning nothing, therefore a 4% chance of winning something. And that stands in pretty stark contrast to the 15% chance of winning something at the Spanish Christmas lottery. As to which you prefer, I guess that's subjective. High chance of winning a little versus low chance of winning a lot. Personally, I prefer the former. I'd rather win something, even if it isn't huge. Obviously, you don't want to take that to the extreme, where you're guaranteed to win, but you just win your money back. That's just not exciting. And trust me, as a YouTuber making maths videos, I'm an expert on what is exciting. Some people might want the extremely low probability of winning massive. It's hard to say exactly where the balance is, but it's evident that the Spanish Christmas lottery strikes a good one. After all, this remains extraordinarily popular in Spain. I couldn't find the source I was happy with for this, but some sites claim that 98% of all adults participate. We do know that the number of ticket series recently increased from 180 to 185, meaning that the State Lottery Society expects to sell at least 180 million decimos to an adult population of around 40 million. Make of that what you will. And that's it, one of Spain's biggest cultural events. It's once per year, with a rich spirit of collective celebration and even some singing children. So to all of my Spanish viewers, Merry Christmas Lottery. Thank you so much for watching. That rounds off 2024. Thank you so much for watching my videos, and if you haven't already subscribed, please do so, as I have plenty more to come in 2025. It's been a great year, with one of my videos hitting 1 million views and reaching another power of 2,000 subscribers, because apparently that's how I'm counting them. Thank you especially to my patrons. Without you, there's no way I could continue to make videos. If you'd like to support me, please find the link below. This has been another proof under another roof. Adios.